when you're a J and you're so busy, what does the boss do to make sure that you're going in the right direction? What should the boss do?
And I think and I would hope that what they would do is to ensure that all the things that I'm engaged in align with my purpose and the skill sets that I have. I think that we all have value through the various aspects of work that we do. Some of us are phenomenal in writing, or you have a different trade, whatever that may be. But then there are also things that we do that just bring us great value and purpose to our lives. And so hopefully that individual knows who I am and is allowing me to direct that in the right way. And by the way, I do feel like everything that I'm doing aligns with my purpose. I'm an educator at heart. So no matter what, I'm from real estate to my current position, it's all about educating others.
What if you come from a community that has lost hope and but you see the skill sets that are there in the community? How do you bring them in, draw them in to encourage and keep them going?
So I went to school in Flint, Michigan. I moved from rural Wisconsin and was a college student right before the water crisis hit, which is someone who lived in a house that had the lead pipes. That was a fun alumni letter to get. But I got my start in STEM outreach by doing a Girl Scout STEM day in that community. And in my head, I was like, oh, who wouldn't want to come to this? And the first year was successful, but what we found in talking to the community is approaching STEM from a hands-on way and emphasizing that it would be different, that everyone was welcome. You didn't need any kind of skill set, removing transportation barriers, offering to fund busing, and waiving transportation fees were big. But in talking to girls there, a lot of them said that were from the community, they came from all over southeastern Michigan, was they just wanted people to believe in them and tell them that I think you should do this. I think you're capable of doing this. And a lot of those girls said in their schools, they just weren't getting that from people. They were more people telling them they couldn't do something than they could, which is hard to hear. I'm sure Keisha feels the same. I would feel very heartbroken to hear someone's in a school like that. So in that community, that was just a small piece. What we found by just trying to make sure everyone felt like no matter where you're coming from, you can be a part of this and be here, and being the person to say, I believe that you can do this, made a big difference for that very small subsection of that community.
Yeah, if I could answer that, I think the essence of being a leader really is how do you motivate people to work towards a common goal? I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day. So motivating people is a challenge, particularly when they've lost hope. And I think you have to be authentic. You have to not be afraid to say, I think this is important, and let people laugh at you and say, oh, that'll never happen. You know, that can't happen here. So it's hard. It's hard with groups either in work or out in the community when people just say it's a hopeless. But I always go down to my engineering background and say, you know, if we just break this down, what can we solve? Let's just break this down and find a small problem that we can, or maybe we can't solve this big problem, but let's find a problem we can solve. And then let's see if we can work towards that. I guess that's my only advice.
As I was thinking through the question that you asked, I go back to why have they lost hope? Why don't they want to be involved? And we may not be able to answer all of it, but what initially comes to mind is not being heard is something that I hear a lot from individuals, not feeling like they're seen. And so we held a community roundtable in the Granville area just to hear what problems are rising that we may know of or may not know of. What would they like seen differently? How can we contribute to that? And by all means, that small thing led us to holding a community event where there were so many people who came out, but we were then able to tap into, you have this business that you haven't even told us about? Why not? And so we were able to then pull from them. But I think there has to be an initial, what's your reasoning behind not wanting to be involved or feeling like your hope is lost? And then hitting it at the root of what that is.
Keisha, is it?
Yes.
Keisha, your analogy of we need to moccasin up, but then take the moccasins off resonated with me. Can you elaborate a little bit more? And that really goes for all of you.
Absolutely. So my time in City Year, when I served, it's a nonprofit organization, but it really is an AmeriCorps program, was all about servant leadership. And one of our founding stories, it talks about moccasing and being empathetic for others that are around you. You may not have ever experienced what they're going through, but you have to take a moment to step into their life. What does it look like, feel like, sound like to be in the position that they're in? And then how do you respond now knowing that? Because we can be, and I'll talk about Keisha. Let me not talk about you all. I can be tunnel vision on what's happening with me and forget the impact of my response on others. And so if I'm able to moccasin, feel what they're feeling, see what they're seeing, I can respond in a more empathetic way that lets them know I may not have ever experienced this, but I'm here with you. I hear what you're saying and I'm here to support you. Whether you want me to listen, whether you want me to take action, I'm here. And as a principal, there are stories that I could tell. I mean, even in other leadership positions, but there's something that's happening in everyone's life. We're all human. It's not all sunshine and roses every day. But as a leader, people are coming to you with the issues, whether it's a student, whether it's a parent, whether it's a staff member or a colleague. And so sometimes you can feel overwhelmed by the amount of turmoil that's occurring in people's lives that you get so down because you can't answer everyone's problems, but they're coming to you with it. And at the end of the day, I had to be able to shed that. I understand it. I'm going to respond to you in the moment with what I can give you, but I can't let that emotionally impact me every day because then I'm not at my healthiest and my best for you. Yeah.
John, what do you do to ensure that you're taking care of yourself just like Keisha is?
You know, that's a big deal. I'm fortunate that my personality is fairly easygoing, so it's hard to, I don't upset easily. I'm a generally positive guy. I live in my own little bubble where I think everybody loves me, and I'm the center of the universe. So I've always had that. I think, high self-esteem is something that's very important, honestly, in getting through the day when times are tough. But, you have to take time. It's just you have to take time to get rest. You have to try to exercise. The problems can seem overwhelming, but sometimes you just have to put them aside and do something else, and the solution will come to you. So it is hard. Everybody wants to be the boss, and there's a lot of great perks to it, but the hard part, that is the hard part, is all the responsibility that you feel and all the issues that come. But you'll often find when people come and talk to you, they aren't really looking for a solution. They just want to talk and process the issue by telling you. So they'll often know the solution. But it is probably the biggest challenge of being a leader is how do you not let it overwhelm you and just plow you under.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me too. When I was starting my career, especially when I started moving into leadership positions, I would always feel like I had to deal with things that day. Like if an email came in or a project came up, I'm like, okay, I need to deal with this before I go home. And suddenly you're stuck in the office and it's 7 or 8 at night. And I know this isn't true for every field, but the fields I've been in, everything's always there the next day when I get back, and it still has the same importance or urgency. And so whether I stay till 8 p.m. and get something out that someone won't look at till tomorrow, or I wait, go home, kind of take a break, process it, and come back the next morning, I found that everything's still there, and I haven't had any bad things happen since I started shutting my computer off at 5 p.m. or whatever time. And I think secondary to that is, it's, as John kind of said, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And I found if my team is really happy and feels like they're supported, suddenly things are less stressful for me because we're all sharing that load and everyone feels like they're a part of it. And having that open door that people can either vent and externally process what they're going through or know that we can share the load, because sometimes I feel like I have to do everything myself and I don't. I have a lot of wonderful people around me, and remembering to share, I think, is a form of self-care.
One more thing I want to add to that, but it's a bit of a platitude because I don't always follow it myself, but I try to, which is you cannot doubt yourself. Everybody else in the world is going to doubt you. So if you doubt yourself, you know, you're gone. If you're not going to cut it, somebody will come by and they'll pull you off the stage. But if you're going to go and work this, you have to have faith in yourself. And once you start doubting yourself, then that's when you lose it. So you just have to plow ahead and say, you know, I know this is tough, but I have faith in myself. And no matter what anybody else says, I'm just not going to let that get to me. And I know that's really, really hard, but it's something I try to live by. And I think it's really important.
I also serve as president of Wisconsin Lutheran College, and there's a lot of people just writing off this generation of young people, college students. I don't see it. I don't buy it at all. But what advice would you give to a 22-year-old self, knowing what you've done and the moccasins that you've walked in? These aren't easy moments. To be a college graduate and to head into the world, and I would love your thoughts on that from your perspective of where you are now.
I can start off and say trust the process. When I graduated from undergrad, I went directly into AmeriCorps, making $11,000 a year on food stamps, and did not know exactly what I wanted to do, but I was serving and I was happy. I didn't know where it would lead to. I had no clue where I would be in my life now, but trusting the process and allowing opportunities to open. And they opened because of my commitment and dedication to the work that I was doing. So whatever you do, give it your all and trust the process. Now, but you still need to be strategic and apply for things, but by all means, doors just opened for me that I couldn't have even imagined because of dedication and work ethic. So I'll leave it at that.
I see younger people who are doing a great job out there, and regardless of what you think of them, the world is theirs, and they have to shape it to the way they want it to be. And so I think if you're 22 or 42 or 62, you can be out there making a difference in the community. And the earlier you get started, you'll learn a lot more and you'll do a lot more. So I would just say don't wait to get started. Don't think I'm too young. Nobody's ever going to listen to me or things like that. Just go out there and find something that you're passionate about and get involved.
When I think back to being a 22-year-old student, I work with a lot of students, and sometimes I feel like I'm not that far removed, and then I do the math, and I am. But I had such a lack of self-confidence, and I just figured at some point I would figure it out, and that confidence would come, that I would get to a role, and I would know a lot, and I don't know if I expected someone to be like, Liz, you've made it, you get it, you know everything, you can be confident now. And I don't know if that feeling ever comes. I think there's always something new to learn. There's always other people to learn from. And I think accepting that you won't know everything at probably any point, to the exclusion of maybe any PhDs in the room who really know everything about what your PhD was in. And just leaning into it. And sometimes it's okay to be quiet and take a moment to go freakishly Google a bunch of stuff about what you heard in a meeting and had no idea about, and that's okay.
I was wondering what you think about the state of servant leadership these days. As you were telling your story about the three things you could do, move, complain, or do something, there seems like we're in a world where there's a lot of complaining, but that may just be because of the 24-hour news cycle and they got to talk about the complaining stuff. So
That is, I don't think a lot of times people really realize how silly that is, but and people feel like, there's powerful forces that are working against them. And they may say, John, that's a real naive thing you just did there. What's that going to do? But I think it's too bad that there's not. I think things like this are good. We need to have more positive messages out there in the community. And more people have to declare that, I'm out here working for good. And I don't care if you think, there's no chance, I'm going to do it. So I do think our society has become, has succumbed to too much complaining and not enough rolling up your sleeves and doing the job. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people out there that are doing that. And that doesn't mean that we can't all in this room do that.
Oh, the three things John listed, it's really easy to complain. It's harder to even today, take 2 hours out of your day and learn more about servant leadership. This is candidly my first servant leadership, formal experience. And we were talking earlier, Dick's like, well, why haven't you been to one? I'm like, I don't know. There's always just kind of been something else going on. I think it's hard to make things a priority. until someone shows you the importance of it and you experience it. And I think at MSOE, I hear about it all the time. But when I was in industry, I don't think I ever had heard of servant leadership. And I wouldn't have known it was something you could pick to do and embody. So getting the word out more, kind of like John shared, I think is helpful.
Two things come to mind when I thought about your question. The first is when I think about the community overall, and the opportunity to serve on the board of City of Milwaukee, the young people that I see that are so eager to do what I did years ago and get paid minimally to serve in schools still gives me hope that you can do this, and you want to serve, you want to engage with others, you want to listen for minimal money, is great to hear, because we can do this and we get paid for it in our lives as leaders. The second thing is thinking about more business or organizations and corporations. I think servant leadership, being in the leadership department for healthcare, it may not be a coined term that we're using all of the time, but aspects of servant leadership is weaved into the things that we do, or the programs that we're providing for development for our leaders, even our teammates. And so even though you may not call it out as servant leadership, I absolutely believe that there is still aspects woven into the work that we're doing to develop the individuals corporately and in nonprofit organizations.
And I do want to add one more thing. I know I already talked on this, and this doesn't directly relate to the question, but I like to use analogies, and the analogy that I use is you can sit in a locker room and you can plan the game. So a lot of people sit in the locker room and they say, well, I'll get involved once I get more experience, or once I get more deep in my job, or once I get this or that. And I really need to have this before I can really get involved and make a difference. But so you can sit in the locker room and game plan all day, but at some point you got to step out in the field and play the game. And the way you get better is playing the game. You'll find out what you don't have when you're out there playing the game, not sitting in the locker room. So just get out there and play the game, and don't worry so much about, am I ready? You'll find out if you're ready if you get out on the field, and then you'll find out pretty quickly what you need to do to get better.
I'm not sure how best you'll handle this question, because while it was a short presentation, I'm still not sure the nature of your work. But I work in IT, and my team now is fully remote. So my question to you is, how have you adapted, evolved as a servant leader in a remote world?
Mike, I can appreciate that question, because I work 100% remote, and in the leadership development department as well. And I think that one of the things that I said, and this is not a whole like advocate Aurora thing, but one of the things that I said about my job was that I have never been in an organization working 100% remote that has built a culture that it has and allows me to still feel so welcomed, so valued remotely. And it is we aren't able to stop by each other's office and have those conversations like we used to before, but it is those intangible moments in the midst of our meetings where we are intentional about sending kudos and shouting out individuals, recognition, ensuring that you have support. And that looks different depending upon your role or what IT, or, depending upon the department that you're in. But I think the intentionality has to be there, especially in a remote environment, because you can feel isolated. You're sitting at home in your office all day by yourself. I'm on hundreds of meetings a week, not a day, but hundreds of meetings a week. And so that can be a lot. But I really think that our leadership team has modeled for me what it is to do for the rest of our colleagues in supporting them. Even when listening, we schedule weekly calls with our teammates. I'm not their leader, they're not my leader, but for 30 minutes a week, I have a call with them just to connect. Talk about whatever, my daughter, their kids, holiday plans, building relationship, listening to them, building empathy for things that may be occurring, figuring out even for service. We said, hey, some of you are in Wisconsin, some of you are in Illinois. What's a service opportunity that we can get together in our respective regions and gather together? So there are a ton of opportunities to still build community remotely. I'm an advocate for it.
I've really struggled with the change to remote because I don't want to be a micromanager. And I feel like in a remote environment, it's really easy to feel that way when you're checking in a lot. So trying to reframe, kind of like Keisha said, I would do bi-weekly one-on-ones with some of my team members instead of framing it as, what are you doing? Because I genuinely don't know. You have a role that I have no insight into what you're doing. As how was the last week of work go for you? What challenges did you run into? Is there anything I can help you with? And framing it more as a discussion than like a structured check-in. I think they're also more comfortable conversations, but I've found with my team, we're a hybrid team, so it is a little different, but I have one teammate who's mostly remote and works evenings and weekends because he's in schools most of the time. And I have days where I feel like I have no clue what's going on. And my coach recommended to me just, yeah, have a candid conversation instead of framing it in as like a structured, what are you doing with your time? And that's helped a lot in listening again to what they have to say.
Theoretically, you could do anything remote. Like right now, I have an issue. I have someone in Sarasota and they're going through a hard time, a manager, and I really need to check in with them and say, how are things going? And not just, did you get it done yet? Or, you can still say, how are things going? How are you feeling? So I think from that kind of thing, you can still do things remotely, but I have a little more building affinity. I can't say that I've gotten a really good relationship with somebody that I didn't know remotely. So it's a challenge,